Alrighty. It is 2:01 and we want to be very respectful of your time today and make sure we can give you as much information as possible. So we're going to kick it off. I'm Kara Franker. I'm the president and CEO of Visit Florida Keys, otherwise known as the Monroe County TDC. And today I have Kelli with me as well. Kelli, you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Kelli, as you know, is our Senior Director of Market Research. Um, we have a lot of information to go through today, so we're going to try to go through it as efficiently and quickly as possible. So I'm going to run it, and then what Kelli's going to do is jump in whenever there's extra things that we want to make sure that we add for you, or whenever she feels like I'm screwing something up. So she has full reign to jump in whenever she wants.
Well, that
So
won't.
all right, here we go. What is the current state of the travel industry? This is according to the U.S. Travel Association, and they're tracking summer travel trends. So, despite kind of what's going on at a national and international scale, we are seeing that domestic travel remains resilient. And we're continuing to watch this, and we're going to dive deep, way deeper into that as we go along. And then consumers are still wanting to travel. So sentiment is mixed about what they're seeing and what's happening, but they're still deciding to make the trip and they want to book trips and they're still doing it. Travel costs are down. And then, as you probably know, and you've heard a lot about, international travel is uneven. So with Canada down quite a bit, there are some interesting markets like Mexico that are up. And then we're looking at the labor market. We're going to go into that as well. But the key takeaway for today, we're not going to hide the lead here, and that's travel demand remains strong. And we're going to look at that specifically for the Florida Keys as well. This article that came out of the Miami Herald a few weeks ago, I think probably resonated with some in Monroe County as well. Restaurants are kind of wondering what's going on. And so while we're going to talk about really the hotel industry today, it is interesting that this article in particular talks about perhaps going back to a seasonality of pre-COVID times. And then what we're seeing and what we're hearing on the ground is that some businesses are thriving right now in Monroe County and having their best season ever, if you can believe that. And then others are struggling. So we really want to look deeper into that and figure out what we can do together to kind of weather this next season. And if you look at the headlines in general, it's kind of alarming. You see everywhere from Vegas to Hawaii to San Francisco and Orlando. And what the headlines are showing is, there is quite a bit of disruption going on. So what does this mean for us? And how do we look at that going forward? Well, we look exactly at the data and we try to make the decisions based on what we're seeing there. All right. So this is our latest data from Star. And what they're showing is that RevPAR is up 21.9% year to date over 2019. And you're like, of course it's over 2019 because we've seen gangbusters growth after the pandemic. So stay with me here. We also want to look at vacation rentals. So compared to fiscal year 24 and 23, 2025 has maintained a notably higher share in every month so far. And so this is interesting because this is suggesting a shift in visitor preference toward vacation rentals and other non-hotel options. So we have to monitor this as we look at the next one, which is revenue. So bed tax collections for 2025 is even edging past 2024. So despite what the headlines are saying, if bed tax collections and if tourism development tax revenue is staying pretty steady, what does that mean right now? And then what does that mean for the future? And so that's what we're looking at next. And then the other question that we're getting is, if tax collections are stable, like we just saw, why is Monroe County dealing with budget cuts? And it's a great question, but that has to do with policy changes at the state and federal level that doesn't have to do with tourism. And so that's an important note that's different when we're looking at all of this data. So today we're going to take you through our brand new hotel forecast data. This is from a partner we have called Tourism Economics. They are a subsidiary of Oxford Economics, and this is what they do. So we're going to look at our monthly and daily STR hotel data. And then we're also going to look at some of the assumptions about what's going on in the tourism sector nationally. And then we're going to zoom in on what we're seeing in the Keys too. And so if you just came for this one nugget, your bottom line is this: we are looking at an expected occupancy-led rebound in 2025, with ADR, if you're not an hotelier, that's average daily rate. So the rates growth returning in 2026. So that's kind of the end. That's the beginning and the end right there. So you can just call it a day if you don't want to go into the details. So today, this presentation is about heads and beds. This is about sales and marketing. And if you've seen any of my other presentations, you know that we've talked a lot about destination stewardship. That's the larger framework. This is a big change from the past and how the TDC has operated because we're balancing all of those interests. So I do, for anyone who's not in the industry, want to just take a quick second to remind you of this beautiful tree that we're looking at. And the idea is that we're looking for a net positive tourism ecosystem where we align everyone doing well from a business standpoint with our community values and also our residents' quality of life. So what does that mean? Absolutely, it's heads and beds. That doesn't change. We want to make sure that everyone in the tourism industry makes money and that we're helping to do that. We also want to look at how do we benefit our residents with their social well-being, quality of life. And then we also want to protect our environment and then also our culture and our heritage. So just a friendly reminder on what destination stewardship is. And then also why the role of tourism is such a big deal for us in the Keys. These numbers are staggering. We're looking at $3.5 billion in spending annually. This is a huge number, $11,500 in what we save residents in local and state taxes. And then remembering that visitors are paying more than 24% of Monroe County's sales tax revenue. And then the biggest reminder of all is what? That all of the money that we're talking about today and this revenue is paid by tourists, not by residents. And it is important that we educate our community on these items. Okay, so tourism we know is the economic engine, and we'll keep coming back to that over and over again. But then as we go forward and we're looking at this forecast, what do we know? We know that the hotel industry in the Keys has experienced quite the roller coaster ride since COVID. And so after 2020, the Florida Keys was at the top of all the hotel markets in the term of recovery. And then what we've been seeing in 2022 through 2024 is kind of that normalization of travel patterns. And then what we're looking at is year to date. So this year through July, demand is rebounding, but rates are falling. And so then compared to the same period in 2019, year to date demand is up, while ADR is up 25 or 27% higher. And then as we see that ADR is forecasted to decline this year before growth returns in 2026, we're also looking at demand forecasting to rise. We're looking at 3.6% in 2025. So we'll go deeper into all of this, but part of this outlook has to be what's going on from the economic standpoint. And a lot of it comes back to tariffs and policies. So what do we know? We know that Oxford Economics and Tourism Economics, they revised down the GDP growth and they're cutting their forecast slightly. And that has to do with the trade and tariff kind of uncertainty that's happening. We know that the labor market is cooling. It's not crashing or cracking. Hiring has slowed. We know that job seekers are looking at difficulty, but there haven't been a lot of layoffs yet. And so we are expecting unemployment to rise slightly by Q4. And then the tariffs. And then every day the tariffs are a different story if you follow the news and you watch the headlines. So what we're looking at is new trade actions are forecast to lift the core inflation above 3% by year end. And that's up from 2.7% in June. And then what do we know about what the Fed is doing? Right now, they're holding back on cuts. They did 3 cuts in late 2024. They're prioritizing inflation control. And then we have hopefully one more cut expected in December unless the job market weakens even further. And then what we know, when we saw this on the first slide too, that consumers are still spending. So wage gains are outpacing inflation, real incomes are rising, and households benefit from low debt ratios and strong balance sheets, which we'll take a look at as well. And then of course, the international travel issues that we're having. And, besides what's going on from a standpoint of Canada, we have visa processing delays and some of those other items that we're facing as well. So if we know that the job market is showing signs of weakness, when we take a look at that in this graph here, we know that the labor market is in a slow to hire, slow to fire state of uncertainty. The number of permanent job losses was unchanged in July, so we're not looking at a lot of layoffs. But on the other hand, the duration of unemployment is increasing, and the share of those that are unemployed, they've been out of work for more than 6 months, is the highest it's been since early 2022. And then going forward, so if the unemployment rate remains low, the slow rate of hiring has been offset by the slow growth in the labor supply due to, things like aging population, a sharp reduction in immigration, and items like that. So what do we know about the tariffs? So the growth in the consumer or the CPI has accelerated. And the increase in tariff exposed goods such as household appliances, apparel, toys, the things that you buy, those costs are being passed down to the customer. So then what's happening is there's a lag between changes in the tariffs when the impact on inflation is evident. So we anticipate growth in consumer prices to accelerate as we keep going through the end of summer and into fall. But those increases would be exacerbated if threatened by additional tariffs, if that becomes a reality. So we're just gonna have to keep watching that. And then as we go forward, we're looking at the consumer sentiment, which continues to improve. It improved in July. So the University of Michigan is studying this. And then consumers, they started to feel a lot better about July. So we saw equity markets continuing to post strong gains. Unemployment rate dipped a little bit. Gas prices remained low and stable, but the sentiment declined for those in the lowest income bracket. And this is interesting for us to really take a look at. So high income and middle income brackets have a different viewpoint than low income at the moment. So those in the low income households are not expected to benefit from gains in the equity markets, which would be the first to feel the impact of tariffs on their budgets. And then of course, fears over inflationary impact of tariffs continue to dominate the consumer psyche, and that keeps sentiment a little bit weak. And then, the tariffs, as they've been paused at different times, that's helped with sentiment begin to rebound, but then downward pressure on sentiment could resume if new tariffs take effect. So income growth should support consumers, and we're looking at earnings continuing to outpace inflation. So if growth remained higher than CPI in June, and then growth in real inflation adjusted income is expected to support modest growth in consumer spending. And so then as we look at the household balance sheets, those are strong. So healthy household balance sheets, particularly among the higher income households. And so that accounts for a disproportionate share of travel spending. And then many support travel through the economic slowdown. So if you've heard me talk in front of the TDC or the BOCC, and you hear us talking about our target markets, we are looking at the higher income households. Tourism economics expects the GDP growth of 1.7% in 2025 and 2% in 2026, and that was adjusted downward. And then despite the economy having a number of fissures and growing below its trend rate, it isn't on the precipice of a recession. So hopefully that's good news. And then tariff levels are creeping higher and the associated changes to our forecasts are modest, but then China has not found itself in the crosshairs of the latest tariff round. And so that hopefully limits some of the risks to the economy and disruptions. And then as we look forward to 2026, we're hoping that the economy will improve, and that will be supported by tax cuts, extensions, and the fading effects of the tariffs on inflation and real disposable income. All right, looking at the national hotel performance. So the hotel industry continues to be characterized by modest demand growth. It rose by 0.5% in 2024 and was up just 0.1% through July of 2025. And then occupancy growth has been constrained by the increased supply nationwide. So we're talking about the whole country, with little growth in demand RevPAR, which is revenue per available room. And then revenue growth is dependent on the higher rates. So for forecasts, this is what we're looking at. Hotel demand surpasses 2019 level in 2027. And so you see the graphs here on the left side of the screen, that's the annual growth rates. And then you're looking at the index on your right hand of the screen. Don't worry about taking screenshots of any of this stuff because we will send all of this to you so that you can peruse it at your leisure. And then from a national outlook as far as air travel. So growth at the airport checkpoints has slowed a little bit after 2024 was record setting. So we're looking at 2024 as kind of the busiest year ever. And then with checkpoint volume being down 0.7% year to date through June and volume declining slightly, but rebounding slightly in July. As far as for Key West and the Keys, we're looking at March 2025 reaching the highest peak on record. And so that's reinforcing the Keys' strongest part of the season. Summer and early fall dips remain consistent, aligning with our typical shoulder seasons. And then we're expecting holiday winter rebounds and limited supply support continued through rate or ADR and RevPAR growth. As far as overseas travel, this is stuff that you keep hearing in the news. And then, as you all know as well, with the timing of Easter shifting between March and April, that had an effect on it as well. But of course, international arrivals have slowed, and that's in part to do what's going on with the overall global travel climate, immigration policies, and that sort of thing. And so travel to the US may also be constrained by visas and staffing issues and screenings. And it's something that US travel has their pulse on and that we continue to study as well. Here's some of the graphs showing US visits by Canadian travelers. So you really just kind of feel and see that in this graph. So while Canadian travel to the US has declined year to date, Canadian travel to other world regions has increased in an estimated 6.6%. So they're still going places, just not here. And then in 2024, roughly 20% of the Florida Keys visitation was international, but just over 3% of that is Canadian. And so you'll hear me talk about how we're going to focus on which international markets in our domestic market as well. So these declines for international arrivals are expected to be widespread. The overseas market decline for 2025 is relatively modest right now, but this does mark a substantial downward revision to tourism economics forecast at the end of last year when they were expecting quite the growth. So the new forecast implies that overseas visits will remain 15% below 2019 levels this year. All right. Now, zooming in specifically to the Florida Keys in our hotel forecast prepared by Tourism Economics. So demand is on track to rise 3.6% in 2025, following 3 consecutive years of declines. So demand isn't forecast to reach the 2021 peak until 2028. And then the hotel pipeline in the Keys is modest, with only 1 hotel currently under construction. So demand growth will flow through to the higher occupancy levels. And you see the 2 graphs that are showing you there as well. As far as ADR and revenue, the annual average daily rate is forecast to decline 2.7% in 2025, and this is the 3rd consecutive year of falling ADR. The ADR recovery is forecast to begin in 2026, which is 1 year later than demand, and that rebound is beginning in 2025. Room revenue is forecast to rise just slightly at 0.8% in 2025 as demand growth offsets the decline in ADR. And so as ADR is lagging demand, the rebound is coming. So ADR cycle is lagging demand by 1 year. Demand declined between 2022 and 2024. ADR is declining 2023 to 2025. Demand is on the rebound in 2025, while ADR is forecast to grow in 2026. And then relative to 2019, ADR peaked at 144% in 2022. Wow. And then ADR is forecast to equal 130% of 2019 levels in 2027, while demand is projected to equal 108% of the pre-pandemic peak. I'm definitely not going to read this slide to you. This is when we send this out. If you want to know more about tourism economics, you want to dive deeper into how we got all of this information. That's why I wanted to provide that to you. Also, now as we go into some of this other information, I wanted to bring this to you. If you came and you listened to the last Zoom webinar that we did, we talked about our visitor impact study. And this continues to be something that we're seeing with less people going to bars and more people interested in experiences. I wanted to bring that to your attention today because I'm hearing, and maybe you are too, that there's some issues with not as many people on Duval Street. And this is in Key West. And this is not widespread to all businesses. And, we're trying to figure out what may be the factors. And so one of the things I think is interesting to look at is on this graph, you see 1, 2, 3, 4 down, going out to bars, how that's decreased quite a bit. It's not going to be the explanation, when the cruise ships are in port makes a big difference. What experiences people have to do. Are they walking on Duval or are they on a golf cart or other things? And so we are willing and able to help have some great conversations about what we can do to boost businesses on Duval Street and beyond. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention that there may be some soul searching that we need to do about what the experiences are. We're going to support our bars, but we may need to provide layered activities as well. And it comes down to this, the competition is fierce. If people aren't just going to show up, then what are we going to do to encourage them to come? And that's going to take us into our marketing plan. And this is the idea. It's data, it's tech, it's storytelling. And that brings me to what we're calling the tide strategy. So if you want to pull out your phone and you want to get a link to the marketing plan, we have a QR code here on the page for you to take a look at it. This has gone in front of the TDC board and also the BOCC, and it's been approved. And the idea is that we are looking for a very strong framework on how we are going to make sure that our marketing efforts are going to deliver for our businesses. One of the things that we're doing in order to do that is to really zone in on our target audience, our demographics, our origin markets, who's flying in and out of the airports, how long are they staying, what kind of chunk of the business are short-term vacation rentals. We're looking at all of this data constantly. We also are making this available to you as well. So besides in the marketing plan, you'll see new dashboards from us as we continue, and we'll shoot these out via email so you have them so that you can take a look at this information as well. The more data that we're taking a look at, we think the smarter that we can be going forward. And then we also have to think about what is influencing people to book. Why are they booking? Why do they want to go somewhere? We know right now based on what we're seeing, and this is from the U.S. Travel Trends Report and also from Skift, people want to relax. They want to have great dining experiences. They want entertainment. They want to travel with their families. Tech is taking over. We know that people are using their phones to book their trips, and we've known that for a while, but now AI is entering the equation. So what do we do as businesses in the Keys to account for that? Today, we're not going to go over our incredible suite of AI tools that we're rolling out in the future. So that'll be a future webinar, but we are deep diving into this. We're going to teach you all of the things that we are doing. Not that we're the experts, but we're going to share them with you, and then we'll go over those in the future. But we also want you to take a look at the marketing. So here's some examples of what we're putting forward in our DAX at the moment, and then I want to show you what we're looking at on the back end as well. This is a big change. I've heard people say, I love it when I see the TV commercials of the Keys. And absolutely, there's nothing better when, your mom in Connecticut or wherever, they see the Keys on TV and they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And it's beautiful footage, and have had beautiful commercials for years and years. But the reality is that when we're looking at the data, even Nielsen says that broadcast viewership continues to decline. It's declined quite a bit over the past decade, while streaming television viewership is on the rise. So we know that digital media is a big deal. We know based on our surveys of folks that that's what's inspiring them to travel to the Keys. So what you're going to see in this marketing plan is very digital focused. And then how does this work? So many of you know how this works, but for somebody that doesn't, what we do is we look at all of the different elements of our ideal traveler. What kind of behavior? What are they going to do to book a trip? Who are they traveling with? Where do they live? Are they traveling with their family? What's their household income? What do they do when they want to get here? And then we put all of that into a campaign, and then we can make decisions and optimize and change it based on what we're seeing and who interacts with our ads. This is an example with Forbes. So you see an editorial. So if we know folks are thinking about traveling to Florida, and then we put a Keys ad right next to it, it just reinforces our messaging. I want to show you this example. So you see all the DAX here, and you see our general awareness campaign as well. Epsilon is one of the companies that we use for our programmatic advertising. And then this is what we see on the back end. So I want to show you how we're tracking this, because then when we look at these numbers, if we see, oh, this one's performing, this one is performing, you'll see that we invested $689,000. That's a lot of sticker shock. You're like, whoa. But when you look at the return on ad spend, which is that number I have circled there for you, for every $1 we spent, we got $13 back. And then you see 8.9 million is the total message and visitor spend in the destination. And so as we're looking at all of these different numbers, this is how we know whether a campaign works or not. It's harder to do that with broadcast and print. And that's why we really believe in investing the money that we can in the best way possible. And that's how we're doing this. What we can even take a look at is how people booked. So this is where people actually spent. It's divided out by zip code. And so you'll see that 61% of the visitor spend in Monroe County came from the Key West zip code. And that was driven by almost 10,000 visitors. And then the Isla Morada zip code had the highest yield per visitor. So as we're diving into this data, we get super granular, and that's how we make our decisions going forward. So just to show you, it used to be that we spent 40% of the entire advertising budget on broadcast TV. Television is still on here. It's still part of the media mix, but you'll see that that percentage now is heavily focused on digital as well as other items. So another thing that's happening is that Visit Florida just launched a pretty spectacular new campaign. I say spectacular, and when is a campaign spectacular these days? Ever. Don't ask Cracker Barrel, because they would tell you a whole different story. In this case, this is a gift to us. Y'all will know the song Jimmy Buffett's Florida Days. Visit Florida was able to secure a partnership with Margaritaville, where they have access to the Jimmy Buffett catalog. And they worked with Mac McAnally to do the song for this new campaign. The idea is Live More Florida Days. And they shot a ton of this campaign, so you can use the QR code and watch the videos. A lot of it they worked with us to shoot in the Keys. And God love our friends in Tampa and Ocala and Tallahassee and all across the state of Florida. There's just nothing more synonymous with Jimmy Buffett than Key West and the Florida Keys. Now, why is this important besides the fact that that's pretty awesome and we love the branding? Visit Florida is going to spend millions of dollars on this campaign. It's launching now. So what we're looking at are how can we draw out through the marketing funnel the idea that folks that are already looking at Visit Florida ads, we saw that placement with Forbes, how do we just shoot up a Key West or Florida Keys ad at the same time just to encourage them to do that booking? So I wanted to make sure that you knew this news is hot off the press. They just launched this on Thursday. And we're also talking to the Margaritaville folks about how we can implement some of what their plans are in the Florida Keys. And then we're continuing to try to work on our public relations game. And this is an example of that. Hopefully you saw this a few weeks ago. Key West was featured in the New York Times, iconic 36 hours to travel column. And this is not something that just happens. There's a lot of effort and work that goes behind trying to land an editorial like this. And the big ROI for this is that if we would have had to pay for this kind of coverage, it would have been the equivalent of spending over $1.3 million. So our public relations piece of the puzzle is really important as well. Wanted to give you some exciting news if you hadn't heard it. We will be on, we as in the Keys, will be on Wheel of Fortune in October. Florida has an entire week and there's an entire day that's dedicated to the Florida Keys. And there's all these reasons why, uniting with a show like Wheel of Fortune really benefits us, both from a paid side and an organic side, because we know that it's going to be a big lead generation also on social media. And new website's on its way. Jean and her team have been working overtime to get this done. The plan is to reveal it at the October TDC meeting. And besides the fact that we're building a brand new website right now, and by the way, you can go to visitfloridakeys.com. You know that our URL has been fla-keys.com since I think the dawn of the internet. I think that's true. But it's now we have that domain and we have visitfloridakeys.com. And then if you look at the top paragraph here where it's talking about marketing and advertising positively impacting traffic, this is even before our new website is launched. This just shows how our advertising is generating organic social media through email, through ads, and through organic video, and all those numbers are pretty substantial. As we go forward, we also wanted to make sure that you know and that you have seen, and we hopefully don't have to use it, a new recovery lodging site. This is the idea. If during breezy season, if we have a storm that we have to deal with, there's a way for hoteliers to jump in an organized way, and we can help the county in whether it's finding rooms for FEMA or crews or relief workers, displaced residents after the fact. We don't want to have to use this site, but it's ready to go when we need it. We have a new crisis communications plan. Just if anybody's interested in that, you want to take a look at it, please scan the QR code and you can see it. And then we've been working on a new strategic plan as well. We're not looking just at the next year, which is what the marketing plan does, but we're looking at the next 3 years. And what does that mean for the destination going forward? How are we incorporating AI into our marketing and sales? What does it mean to be a destination that focuses on management and destination stewardship? How do we better communicate with our stakeholders and our partners? And how do we make sure that our destination is resilient? Couldn't do this presentation without giving a big shout out to our board members who have been extremely supportive through all of the change of the past year and have made sure that we've really stayed on track. So I wanted to make sure to give a shout out to all of them, as well as all of our community members who volunteer on each of the DACs. It's a hard job, especially when you're going through grant funds and how to allocate that money. Also our culture, our dive, we've now added ecotourism to it, and our fishing. These folks do this all to volunteer on behalf of the community, and we're so grateful for their service. And then I would be remiss if I wouldn't just plug this again, an important reminder that residents do not pay tourism taxes, and it benefits our community in so many ways. I'll tell you as that we go into the next legislative session, we're in for probably another fight, just like we had last year. We know that tourism dollars are something that some of the legislatures are going to go after. And so we're having conversations on how do we communicate the value of tourism to our politicians, but also to our community, because it is so important as the biggest economic driver. Do you want to know how to get involved with us? We would love for you to participate in any way you see fit. That could be participating in our sales missions, and we have an incredible sales team, whether that's supporting one of our media trips, if you want your local businesses to be involved in that. And then, of course, you're always invited to come to any of our TDC DAC umbrella meetings. Those are all open to the public, and anyone's welcome to join us at any moment. And of course, share your ideas with us, because the more that you tell us about what's going on in the community, the more we can push your messages out. We do have special promotions and co-ops that we do. So if anybody wants to jump in that, we can plug you in there. And then the easiest way to get involved, of course, is our industry newsletters. And you can receive updates that way, and we can make sure that you are informed. And I tried to flow through that as soon as possible, and that way we could have some time for a few questions. So if I can...
Well, while you're working on that, I just want to share with everyone, I know Jean has dropped in the comments on the side that if you are attending, you will automatically get a copy of this deck. But as the Senior Director of Market Research, I have access to this data and more. I know some people in the chat had asked if there's any that might be Key West specific. There's some data that can be Key West specific. So if you are looking for anything additionally that you thought you might see here, but you didn't, just reach out to me. My email is kelly@fla-keys.com, and I'm happy to help you out in any way that I might be able to.
Awesome. And then keep me honest here, Kelly, the chat, people can't see the chat, right? So we'll need to read questions out so that folks get their answers. Is that?
Yeah, and I think Jean's been doing a pretty good job. We kind of were behind the scenes a little bit answering questions while you were presenting. So I don't know if there's any out there that are hanging.
That's great. So here's a question that says, if we are a wildlife focused business, how do you recommend we capitalize on that growing interest? Are there any destination-wide initiatives we can be a part of? I love that. That's been percolating through too, some ideas of how there's so many amazing wildlife focused businesses and conservation businesses. And so we've talked about, there's a company called Bandwango where you can have like a trail that takes you through. A lot of other destinations do like ale trails. Or is there an opportunity to do something like that where people can check in? They can go to the Wild Bird Center, and they can go to the Turtle Hospital, and they go to the Dolphin Research Center. So we are looking for those. If anybody has ideas on how you think we can best promote that, we would love it. But yes, we are looking at those. Looks like any updates on the co-op campaigns? Yes. So I'll tell you what we've been doing. And part of it is as we work out the kinks with the clerk's office to how in the future do we accept co-op funds under, rules of accountability and transparency that we have to follow with Monroe County government. Right now, we've been doing co-op campaigns in kind. So we do, I believe, maybe have a few like last minute spots. So if anybody wants to know what's available, Shireen on my team is the best person to talk to, and we can connect you with her. You can either email me, Kara at fla-keys.com, and I can connect you with her, or her email is Shireen, Sherene, at fla-keys.com. Um, okay, we've got so many questions coming through. Let's see. Oh, people are volunteering to host media, which is wonderful. Oh, okay. I think several people are asking now about the split between vacation rentals and hotels and trying to figure that out. And what does that mean? So, Kelly, that's probably a great question for you. I know
Yeah,
you've been
I got
diving
a
into that.
handful of information there that I think might interest folks. On our county website, you can see a copy of our economic impact study that we did. Um, and when we're looking at vacation rentals and vacation rental data and that percentage that keeps growing and growing and growing, well, interestingly, uh, the worry was that there's more and more inventory coming on board. So we're dipping into um, workforce housing with more and more people renting the vacation rentals. Well, this economic impact study actually showed that the bigger percentage that's being uh, the fact that the percentage is growing is not necessarily because we're displacing um, workforce housing or affordable housing. More and more homes went on the market and now became vacation rentals that were actually non-occupied homes. So the people that had homes, second and third homes here are now selling them and that's what's getting rented. Are they a bigger piece of the pie? Yes, they are taking up more market share, but not necessarily dipping into housing that we need for our workforce, if that answers that question.
That's interesting. And then I see somebody is asking too about OTAs and whether we know how much hotel resort revenue has been lost to OTAs versus direct bookings. That's a really good question. So I
It
don't
is a
know if
really
we
good
know that
question.
specifically for the keys, but this is so the information that I have nationwide. I just pulled this up because I knew that we had this. So OTAs, which stands for online travel agencies. So that's like an Expedia or like other places where you can book. And when you don't book direct through the hotel, they are regaining market share. This says direct hotel bookings fell from 62% in 2020 to 41% in 2025. And then OTA hotel bookings rose to 38%. So that's really, really interesting. And I don't know how we get that information specifically for the keys. Do you know, Kelly?
I do have some data on that through um, Demand 360. So for those hotels that report to Demand 360, I will tell you that's one of the biggest channels for booking is the OTAs. Absolutely. And I can pull data on that and reporting. If anybody wants to look at some specifics, they can reach out to me and I'm happy to do that for them.
That's great. Okay. Yeah, and more folks are asking about fam tours. So we have a little bit different approach on hosting media than what happened previously. And so we really like our individual journalists to come through. And then what we've been focusing on is really those like A+ journalists. So it's more quality over quantity. And so if you were used to being like, oh, I always had like a journalist come through, it's in one strategy may not be better than the other, but in part of like ramping up the team and also getting our public relations team up and going with Turner PR, who are fantastic partners, and they are chomping at the bit to host more FAMs. So I think as we go forward, we can continue to host them. But I love that folks are like, bring people to my place because we want to do that. Absolutely. Okay, we still have more coming through. What do you think, Kelly? What are we hitting? What else do we need to hit here?
Let me
Uh,
see some of the questions. Focus businesses.
oh, somebody is asking, how do you share like your current data to help us? I love that. And talking about how many million organic views and followers, the more that we can tag team, the better. because we have a fantastic social media game going on right now. I hope you've seen our channels. I'm so proud of OMG. I'm so proud of Jules and Heidi on the team. They've been just killing it. So any way that we can, share your audience, share our audience to boost what you guys are doing, we want to do that. Just reach out. So shoot me an email and I'll connect you with the right person, Kara@fla-keys.com, and I'll make sure that you get connected with Jules on the team and Heidi and our partners at OMG. We're so appreciative to everything that they've been doing with our social media. So
Yeah,
absolutely, let's share followers. That's a great idea.
definitely have opportunity for collaboration for sure.
Here's a great question. How are you addressing shoulder season marketing? And is that with digital? Absolutely. Here we are staring September in the face, right? So the idea is that the more that we focus on digital and we're focusing on our domestic markets and we're focusing on our drive markets and we're focusing on our loyalists, because when we look at all of the data, we know the folks that have traveled here before and they had an amazing experience, they want to come back. So those are the markets that we're really concentrating on for this fall. And then of course, as soon as we hit October and Fantasy Fest, we're pushing events, we're pushing all the fantastic things that we have to do. We're working on an events calendar also, by the way, that will hopefully organize things so it's a lot easier to find out everything that's going on in the Keys. It's one of the most fantastic things about the destination is there's always something going on. So we want to make sure that we're promoting that as well. So great question.
Um, there's another one that I'd like to address. Someone asked, how do your projections shared for 2026 compare to CoStar's projections, which show a significant decline anticipated? CoStar is the Smith Travel end of it, and our forecast was through tourism economics. CoStar's reporting is based on actual performance trends, and they are showing very modest demand growth nationally. They're showing ADR softening, limited RevPAR growth. And I think while CoStar is invaluable for tracking real-time trends, tourism economics forecast gives us a more accurate view of where the keys are headed over the next 20 to 12 to 24 months. They take a more holistic view. They look at many more Keys specific forecast pieces, not just the supply pipeline. The tourism economics forecast is a bit more favorable than CoStar.
Yeah, that's interesting because most hotels are probably looking at their real-time CoStar data, and then the tourism economics is all the different economic factors that they're looking at. I think that's the big difference. I think a lot of people, there's like 3 or 4 people that are asking us specifically about how Fantasy Fest is pacing. I don't know that we have that exact information, but Kelli, is that something that we can look at as how those dates in October, not right now, but for future, if anybody wants to come to us, I won't put you on the spot and like do math on live. But anybody who's asking how October is looking, are we able to give them that information? Oops, you're muted.
We're all challenged during this presentation.
There's ghosts in the
Yes,
computer today,
October is looking like the same way we've been trending the rest of the year. Occupancy is relatively flat or the driver, and that the rate is suffering.
Another question, does the TDC have any international reps for Europe, South America, business, etc.? Fantastic question. The answer is yes. We have staff we have in-house staff, and then we have agencies that we work with that are on the ground there. We're really excited. We're partnering with Visit Florida to do a Brazilian fam, and that's a new market for us. So absolutely, we are concentrating on those international markets, which is important because as we know that Canada is down, we want to make sure that we're talking to international destinations. We want to make sure that they know that the season is going to be fantastic and they should be here for it. All right. There's still a lot in here that I'm trying to parse through to see if I'd miss anything. Kelli. Oh, so somebody's asking about weddings. Okay, referencing that ADR is unlikely to recover into 2027, 2028. They are seeing a correlation between ADR and wedding event bookings. The higher the ADR, the more we see visitors driven to other areas. Has an analysis been done of the revenue loss across other spending as ADR rises?
Yeah, I'm curious the correlation between ADR and weddings.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Hmm.
That one might stump us. That can be our homework. Is how else can we dig into that piece of it? Oh, and so like food, attractions, catering. Yeah, well, so that would be, I think we should look into that. The other thing that I've asked the team to look at, and part of this came from the FRLA summit that happened. There was some really interesting speakers who were talking specifically about the restaurant industry and how the restaurant industry has been hit hard. And so historically, DMOs haven't really looked as much at the restaurant data as they have at the hotel data or sales taxes. And I think that we should change that. I think we need to look at how the restaurants are faring as well, and if it's different based on areas. So that is something in particular that I think we could do an analysis on. And then also, I'm wondering too, the best way, so it's whoever's talking to us, right? Whoever's telling us like, oh, my business is doing great, which people are saying that to us, or oh, my business is feeling like the pain this year. I wonder if there's some sort of survey that we could put together specifically for our stakeholders that dives into that. And then if we could compare what we're seeing from economic impact and then what people are seeing on the ground, just like we do with our visitor intercept surveys, that might be an interesting thing to dive into as well.
Yeah. And going back to the ADR question, back in one of the slides you showed was back to the forecast that did show the difference with the ADR and the occupancies. The fact that ADR might not recover until 27, 28, the fact that occupancy is doing better or will be doing better moving forward, we see RevPAR recovering by 2026.
Right. And I see another interesting comment in here. It says, I think all of us would agree that we want real data, not sugar-coated. Absolutely. All of the data today is real data, not sugar-coated data. That's why some of it is negative and not positive. So one of the things that I think maybe it's important, Kelly, that we go back to the difference between CoStar and tourism economics. So if CoStar is just looking at the hotel real-time data as far as occupancy, average daily rate, and revenue per available room. So if you're looking at it real time. So help me make sure I say this right, Kelly. Tourism economics is looking at the tariffs, inflation, employment, the labor market, plus the hotel forecasts. So they're looking at all of the different pieces in it. And that's under their travel vertical because Oxford Economics does it in a bunch of different industries. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that this is definitely not sugar-coated data. If it was sugar-coated data, it would be
Painted
all rosy.
differently.
It'd be like we're all making bank. No, the point of today is like, look, this is going to be a challenge. This isn't going to be just like people showing up on your doorstep like they were, after COVID and the boom that it was. This is back to we're gonna have to work hard for our money. This is about our marketing messages. This is how are we spending our money? How are we talking about experiences? We know that folks want experiences. What are we doing to make sure when they come to the destination that we're spreading them around the DAX and they have the experience that works best for them? That's the whole point here. So I just want to make
And
sure that we know.
yeah, and I want to add too, when you're looking at all of the US, and you're looking at, and if anyone's interested in this, I have a slide that I can share with you. If you email me, I can share the information with you. But when you look at all of the United States and you look at RevPAR as reported by Star as compared to 2019, the US is still up 15% in RevPAR over where they were in 2019, 15%. Florida is up 20%, and the Florida Keys are up 25%.
Yes. This is another really good question. You guys, so really appreciate all the questions that are coming in today. One person says it's challenging to have the data lumped into Florida Keys as a whole, and then not every part of the Keys will have the same data. Is there a way that there could be more focus on upper, middle, and lower? Absolutely. We have
Yeah,
that.
I
That would
do
just
have that.
take
Not
2 hours.
every bit of information, but yes, the
Yeah.
Smith travel data, the majority of that I have available. There's a lot of data I have by DAC. Absolutely.
And here's the really great thing too, where it used to be that you had to ask us for all of this, and you still can, and we want you to. On our website, we're putting like all of the visitor intercept stuff, all of the economic impact report. We're going to put this report from Tourism Economics up there. You're going to be able to pull the summaries that Tourism Economics gives us, and then also Kelly designs. Should I say designs? That makes you sound like an artist. You are. You are an artist.
Well, I'll tell you, Tourism Economics has a platform, and I did design with them together a summary where we have lots and lots and lots of all of these different data points that I have access to, and we've aggregated it. And so I have a monthly summary now that has Smith travel data, TSA data, website data, and it's up on our website. Every month I update it. And we're adding more and more layers to it. Every time I get more pieces of information, we just got key data back, which is vacation rental data. I'm adding cruise ship passenger information to it. So take a look at it. If there's something on there that you're like, oh, I wish they had this bit of information. If I can get it for you, I will.
Yes, that's well said. All right, we're right up. We did our hour. I think the questions have slowed down. If we didn't get to something very specific that you wanted us to answer, please email us. We want to make sure we get to your questions. We're happy to answer them. We hope to do more of these. I think these will be quarterly, right? Kelly will get this information quarterly. Hopefully this information is helpful to you as you go into this next season. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you to
Thanks,
the
everyone.
team. Thank you, Jathan. And we'll see you next time.